It's time to talk about June's Journey, a hidden object mystery game with a captivating detective story. When you're playing, you solve a mind-teasing mystery of the roaring 1920s while you dive into June's captivating quest to uncover a scandalous family secret and solve her sister's murder. It's mystery, it's danger, and it's romance, and you never know where the next chapter's gonna take you. If that wasn't fun enough, you get to customize your very own luxurious island estate. Seriously, I cannot stop playing. I am already on the 3rd chapter and I just started recently. Join me back in time in the glamorous 1920s. June needs your help, detective. Download June's Journey for free today on iOS and Android. For just $2.99 a month, you can help the Murder Diaries podcast more than you already do by being a valued listener. In return, you get to listen ad-free. So head over to patreon.com/themurderdiariespod or search The Murder Diaries ad-free on Spotify. You can also subscribe on Apple Podcast. Again, $2.99 and you get to listen ad-free.
Welcome to The Murder Diaries. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Paige.
It's a late August evening in North Georgia. It rained hard last night, so the heat and humidity of the day are lingering well into an afternoon that's quickly moving toward dusk. Down an embankment in a densely shaded ravine, there's a symphony happening. Cicadas hum from their hidden places in high foliage. Sparrows and finches chirp and sing from the oak treetops above. And the rushing current of a nearby stream is a reminder of the severity of last night's storm. Even distant motorboats out on Lake Lanier can be heard from here. The scene is peaceful, almost idyllic. Suddenly, a man pushes through a thicket of bushes. The insect noises stop and the birds above take flight. It's eerily quiet now. As he pauses to catch his breath, the man notices a mannequin lying face down in a nearby pool of rainwater. He's a Vietnam War veteran, so probably nothing surprises him much. Until he takes a closer look and realizes it's not a mannequin he's seen at all, but the dead body of a teenage girl. This is how 16-year-old Hannah Truelove was found in 2012, stabbed multiple times and left to die in a muddy ditch just a few hundred yards from where she lived, at upscale Lake Lanier Club apartments in Gainesville, Georgia. Beautiful, fun, sensitive. There are so many words one could use to describe Hannah. But really, she was just a normal kid trying to find herself, wondering what her days might look like beyond high school and a gated apartment community that had her trapped in a prison of typical teenage boredom. Tragically, Hannah Truelove was never allowed to see the future she longed for. Someone took that from her, brutally and uncaringly. This is her story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
When a marriage splinters, the divorce is hardest for the kids. At best, you're torn between the separate lives of your parents. 2 houses, 2 bedrooms, 2 sets of house rules. The fallout of a broken home can be a heavy burden, especially for a teenager. But if 16-year-old Hannah Truelove was navigating any of these complex emotions in the late summer of 2012, she didn't show it much. In fact, the Hannah that most everyone knew and loved during that time appeared to be shy, sweet, motivated, and popular.
Hannah Osborne Truelove was born May 18th, 1996 to Jeff Truelove and Mona Harris. Her mom and dad ended their marriage when Hannah was just 7 years old, and Hannah mainly lived with her mother until the time of her murder.
But that doesn't mean Jeff Truelove wasn't present as her dad. Hannah was still daddy's little girl, well into her teens, and their relationship only seemed to be getting stronger. Jeff and Hannah spent lots of time together. In fact, he told the Gainesville Times that Hannah was a regular presence at his auto body shop. And as a third-generation mechanic, Jeff was proud that his daughter could name all the tools. She even sometimes lent a helping hand as he worked in the shop. But what her dad misses most about Hannah, something that's gone forever, is her beautiful singing voice. Jeff says that she had the voice of an angel. To this day, he can't listen to Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You without crying. A song he once heard Hannah singing when she thought no one was listening, hitting the high notes in perfect key. Her mother, Mona, admired Hannah's bright mind and sharp sense of humor. She was a caring and loving young lady, Mona said. Just a very unique individual in the best way. Hannah's high school counselor still remembers her as a gentle spirit who was calm, well-mannered, and just seemed to love life. She was involved in gymnastics and considered pursuing veterinary medicine when she moved on to college. Tall and slender with striking blue-green eyes, Hannah often talked about pursuing modeling as well. During an ABC television interview, even her principal remarked about what a sweet young lady she was, adding she had a supportive group of friends that she hung around. It can't be stressed enough what a great kid Hannah had become, despite the odds. So many parents worry about their kids falling in with the wrong crowd or becoming prey to any number of bad influences they might find, or that might find them. That didn't seem to be the case for Hannah Truelove. As far as anyone was concerned, she was an upbeat girl with big ambitions. On the page, Hannah was a picture of teenage normalcy, promise even. But no one lives a picture-perfect life. Beneath the surface, Hannah dealt with struggles only few knew about. Trouble that included a recently rocky relationship with an alcoholic mother, the mandatory involvement of social services in their lives, and Hannah's semi-secret existence online, where she dropped dark clues suggesting something more sinister than your average teenage drama. "I got me an ugly-ass stalker." That was a tweet that Hannah posted on Twitter on August 12th, 2012, 11 days before she was murdered. There's no more context to it than that. Just 7 words about someone that made her feel uncomfortable, enough to share with her small circle of followers online. And why wouldn't she? When you're young and pretty and friendly, unwanted attention can be frustrating. Hopefully you can swat it away most of the time like a mosquito, but it can be scary when an unknown person becomes creepy and aggressive.
Only Hannah knew how she was feeling during this time for sure. It's important to note that this was the only time she ever mentioned a stalker, through a single post on Twitter at that. She never went to her parents or reached out to authorities about being stalked.
Hannah knew she had an audience of friends and peers seeing every entry she posted on social media. And like all kids using Facebook and Twitter around 2012, the more dramatic the post, the more likes, emojis, and comments the drama might bring. But not all her Twitter posts were this cryptic. Most of them revealed a typical picture of teenage angst. It was clear that Hannah wasn't a fan of the apartment complex where she lived, because the same day she made the stalker comment, she also tweeted, "Too many lame people live where I live." In fact, Hannah was posting complaints about her living situation up to the night before she was murdered. On August 22nd, Hannah tweeted, "I need to move out of these dang apartments." The Division of Family and Children's Services, also known as DFCS, might have also been a point of frustration. This social services network had been popping in and out of her life since her parents' divorce 9 years earlier. Through the years, DFCS records suggested a troubled home life, one that included her mother Mona's heavy drinking and drunk driving incidents, as well as Hannah's probation for truancy. Hannah hadn't always been diligent about attending school, and often her mom didn't know where she was. Again, life at home had been far from perfect. But Hannah was trying to see the upside of things. For example, on the day of her disappearance, a DFCS case manager visited Hannah at her high school, and Hannah reported that her mom had stopped drinking and that she and Mona had been on good terms. The social worker even talked with Hannah about ways to get her math grade up so that Hannah could advance to 11th grade math the following year. There were so many good things on the horizon. Hannah was even learning to drive, and one of her most recent Twitter posts was about how much she was looking forward to having her own car and commuting to and from school as a junior. No, life wasn't perfect. But for once, it seemed like Hannah was on the way back from some really dark times. Nobody could have ever predicted what happened next. The days leading up to Hannah's disappearance seemed filled with positive vibes. She had just started 10th grade at Gainesville High School, and her dad, Jeff, had even promised her that her first car would be the used BMW he owned. Sunday, August 20th was a good day for both of them. Jeff gave Hannah 3 crisp $100 bills to use on a school clothes shopping spree. And he knew Hannah enjoyed shopping on her own, so he dropped her off at a local outlet mall so she could spend the afternoon finding the perfect outfit and accessories to begin the 10th grade. Jeff picked her up from the mall when she was finishing shopping, and the two of them went to dinner at a favorite local Mexican restaurant. She had a big thing of fajitas, Jeff said. She could out-eat me any day. After dinner, Jeff dropped Hannah off at the Lake Lanier Club apartments. And that was the last time he would see his daughter alive. 4 days later, on August 23rd, Hannah rode the bus to Gainesville High as usual. After school, it was typical for Hannah to drop her school stuff off at her apartment and then wander around the complex or pal around with friends until Mona arrived home from work, which was usually around 8 p.m. Depending on who you spoke to, Hannah's whereabouts around the apartment complex that Thursday afternoon and evening were unreliable at best. It almost seems as if she was everywhere at once. For example, one eyewitness came forward and said at around 4 p.m., Hannah was seen walking toward picnic tables on the apartment property, while another witness reported seeing Hannah that evening sitting on a wooden staircase near the trailhead that led down to the ravine where her body was found. While someone else saw Hannah back at the complex picnic table area with other teens as late as 7:30 p.m. And yet, another person said that they saw her talking to someone in the complex parking lot.
But the one place we know Hannah was making a point not to be was in the apartment she shared with her mother. She was purposefully avoiding Mona. The two of them had recently argued about Mona not letting Hannah have a cell phone, a reason why Hannah might have been making herself especially scarce that evening. We want to take a minute to tell you about our friends over at Love, Lust, Fear. Love, Lust, Fear is a new podcast series that's exposing the darker side of dating and relationships.
Jake Deptula from Strictly Stalking hosts this new show, and he welcomes guests to share their stories in their own words and reveal those moments when they ignored their gut instincts.
This podcast is compelling and terrifying, but it comes with insightful exploration into toxic dating and relationships that will have you abandoning courtesy and listening to caution. Basically, effing politeness.
Love, Lust, Fear is available wherever you listen to podcasts, so go check it out. Mona Harris didn't typically get home from work until well after 7:30 p.m. The August sky was still lit well after 8 p.m., so it wasn't out of the ordinary for the apartment to be empty when Mona arrived home. But when night fell that evening and Hannah didn't come through the front door, a shroud of worry began to settle over Mona. Her daughter had always been good about coming home before dark. By 9 p.m., worry turned to low-grade panic. Mona called Jeff and asked him if Hannah was with him, and he told her she wasn't. The fact is, Jeff had been at the apartment complex that afternoon. On a whim, he stopped by, but Hannah wasn't home. I went by to see if she wanted to get something to eat, Jeff said. I blew the horn, went up to the door. She wasn't there. After speaking with Jeff, Mona knew it was time to call the police. At 10:15 p.m., Mona called 911 and reported Hannah missing. The police asked Mona the standard questions. Did Hannah have a history of running away? No. Had she ever stayed out this late without permission before? Again, no. By the time Mona called Jeff back after speaking with the police, she had convinced herself that this was because of the rift between her and Hannah over the cell phone situation. Mona was sure that Hannah was with a friend and the whole not coming home thing was out of spite, a way of Hannah getting back at her. But Jeff knew his daughter. She wouldn't just up and leave without saying anything to anyone, argument or no argument. Mona waited for the police to arrive, and Jeff called the apartment every hour for updates, hoping that Hannah had turned up. But the situation was feeling more and more dire as the minutes ticked by. The Gainesville Police Department handled Hannah's missing persons case. Within hours, they arrived and a preliminary search began. Officers fanning out around the perimeter of the apartment complex, shining their flashlights into the forested edges of the property, calling out her name at a nearby dock. They even went door to door, waking up friends who lived in nearby apartments, desperate for any possible leads. But a sudden, severe rainstorm blew through Gainesville in the early hours of Friday, August 24th, creating torrential downpours that dumped several inches of rain on the area. This effectively ended all efforts to locate Hannah, as police had to wait out the weather before continuing the search.
Not much could be done for the next dozen hours or so. The storm had rendered the densely populated woods and deep-channeled ravines behind the apartment complex gullied by rain and rushing water.
City police focused their attention on Gainesville High. The first bell had barely stopped ringing when authorities arrived on the morning of August 24th. They spoke to as many of Hannah's friends and acquaintances as possible, trying to gain more insight into her disappearance. Were there recent changes in her behavior? Did she have a boyfriend? Had she ever talked about running away? Time was of the essence, and any clue would do. The man who would ultimately find Hannah's body, that Vietnam veteran we talked about at the top of the podcast, wasn't part of the search efforts at all. That week, he was visiting his daughter, who was a tenant at Lake Lanier Club Apartments. Days before Hannah's disappearance, the man had alerted the apartment management company of a missing manhole cover out on the edge of the property near a tree line. On the evening of August 24th, around 7:30 p.m., the man walked his dog over to the manhole to see if the cover had been replaced. He and his dog continued their walk, venturing down to the bottom of a steep wooded area where, in a matter of moments, the veteran found Hannah's body. He recognized it was the girl from the missing person report he'd been seeing all day. It was 16-year-old Hannah Truelove. She'd been fatally stabbed. The man immediately contacted Gainesville authorities. Gainesville police, who had been handling the missing person case, responded to the scene first. But since Hannah's body was found just over the city of Gainesville jurisdiction line in Hall County, it wasn't long before Hall County Sheriff's Department investigators arrived as well. The case was immediately turned over to investigator Dan Franklin and his team. They now had their crime scene. Hannah had been lying feet first in swift-moving water for at least an hour when she was found. Her hair was swept back from her forehead, and one of her flip-flops was carried a short distance downstream and caught in the crook of some branches. Some evidence was collected, but not much. The rainstorm had compromised anything substantial there might have been at the time of the murder. Investigator Dan Franklin later told Atlanta's 11 Alive News, she was laying under submerged water for a period of time, and so unfortunately, what that did is it washed away a great deal of our trace evidence and blood evidence. Hannah Truelove's death was nothing short of brutal. She'd been stabbed multiple times, and investigators strongly believe that her murder took place in the exact spot where her body was found. It's also likely that whoever killed Hannah knew the area. The walking paths in and around the woods behind the apartment complex were quote-unquote informal paths, which typically would only be known of and used by residents and visitors familiar with where Hannah lived. Franklin would later add, I think she was led here or came willingly with the suspect.
The Georgia Bureau of Investigation was brought in to help on the case, and as August moved into September, Dan Franklin and Hall County were working Hannah's case non-stop. This included exhaustive interviews with Hannah's family and friends.
As with most high-profile homicide investigations, detectives were inundated with the usual surplus of rumors and hearsay. Some people will just do anything to insert themselves into the tantalizing gruesomeness of a murder case. But it was important for Dan Franklin and his team to consider every tip. They believed it was the only way they could determine what was fact and what was fiction. For example, there was gossip about a secret cell phone that Hannah may have owned, hidden from her mom and dad. Still, investigators could never find any mobile number or a burner phone linked to Hannah. We chased it as far as we could chase it, Franklin said. However, deputies did discover that Hannah was using her Nintendo DS to talk to friends, which isn't really an uncommon or necessarily suspicious way for teens to communicate with one another, especially back then. Detectives scoured the Nintendo device for clues, but ultimately it yielded nothing for the investigation. Another thing is that someone told detectives that Hannah was afraid of a person she rode her school bus with. Even her father, Jeff, at one point questioned whether the killer had ridden the bus with Hannah. But investigators could never be sure who this person was or if they even existed at all. Yet another dead end for detectives working the case. Hannah's mom told detectives about a boy at school who liked Hannah, but whom Hannah didn't really feel the same way about. Remember her tweet about her ugly-ass stalker? Well, it turns out that this is the boy that Hannah was talking about. Once he even showed up at Hannah's house, flowers in hand. But it turns out it was just some kid with a crush. Detectives eventually zeroed in on Hannah's Twitter account. There were lots of tweets to sort through. On the same day as her stalker post, Hannah wrote, "This can't be happening." And later wrote, "Hearing a voice you miss and realizing it's just some random person." Over the next week or so, Hannah was tweeting song lyrics from the band U2. "Did I disappoint you? You act like you never had love and you want me to go without." There were also verses from Brandy. "If you put it down right, like the way I want it, baby, we could fall in love." And that same night, she tweeted ominously, "So scared right now." And then 15 minutes later, she posted, "Every time we talk, I feel sick." The next day, she tweeted, "I'd love to love you, baby," presumably referencing Donna Summer's sensual disco classic. Shortly after that, she wrote, "Yeah, you made a big mistake." Then a few days later, it was more song lyrics from U2. "Did I ask too much more than a lot? You gave me nothing, now it's all I've got." The evening of August 22nd was when she posted about moving, quote, "out of these dang apartments." Later that night, she posted, "I'm getting fat. I have a little tummy now. Ugh." The following day, August 23rd, the day of her murder, Hannah replied to another person's tweet with, "Yes, ma'am." It was the last Twitter post she would make. You could have read anything you wanted into Hannah's Twitter post. That she loved music, that she was a teenager in the throes of romantic pining, that she was dodging a boy's annoying advances. Or worse, that maybe she was frightened by a malevolent interference in her life that was known only to her. But through numerous interviews and with the help of family and friends, Hull County investigators built some context around the things Hannah posted online. According to Detective Dan Franklin, basically they were just her venting. There was nothing that was a legitimate threat that came from those. None of Hannah's friends said that they took her tweets seriously. Even Hannah's dad, Jeff, told the Atlanta Constitution that Hannah never mentioned being afraid or feeling like she was in danger. There was none of that kind of talk the last time they were together on August 20th. It was a great day of shopping for her and a pleasant last meal between the two of them. She made no mention of anything to me, he said.
In the weeks that followed the discovery of Hannah's remains, the grim reality of her murder began to sink in with the Gainesville community. A memorial was installed on a large rock in front of Gainesville High School. Friends and loved ones used this as a place to honor her memory. Students painted the rock with messages of love and remembrance, including a large, quote, "heart for Hannah" and "rest in peace." You guys have heard us tell you a million times by now that Shopify has taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But we want to remind you again, Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store. Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify.
Like Paige mentioned, you've heard us talk about Shopify's POS system for a while now. So make it your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond.
With Shopify, you'll also be getting hardware that fits your business. Take your payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. On top of all of that, Shopify's award-winning help will be there to support you and your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify.
Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/murderdiaries, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/murderdiaries to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/murderdiaries.
This one's for the people who menstruate. If you don't menstruate, feel free to skip ahead. You know that feeling when Shark Week comes that you are just like crawling out of your skin or crazy cravings? Or what about those of you who are approaching menopause or perimenopause? It can be such a struggle to feel comfortable in your own body. Well, we've partnered with Happy Mammoth, who makes estro control to manage things like PMS, and Hormone Harmony to support those who are going through menopause or perimenopause.
Happy Mammoth, the company that created Hormone Harmony, is dedicated to making women's lives easier. And that means using only science-backed ingredients that have been proven to work for women. They make no compromise when it comes to quality, and it shows. Hormone Harmony contains science-backed herbal extracts called adaptogens. Now, here's the beauty about adaptogens. They help the body adapt to any stressors, like the chaotic hormonal changes that happen naturally throughout a woman's life. So Hormone Harmony isn't just for menopause. Any woman with symptoms of hormonal imbalances can take it, but it's perfect for those horrible menopause symptoms that put a woman's life on hold, like hot flashes and night sweats, racing thoughts and low moods, poor sleep and feeling tired all the time, occasional bloating and gas, or even no desire to be in bed next to someone, if you know what I mean. Hormone Harmony can help with all of these things. And the biggest benefit is feeling like yourself again. That's what women mention over and over in their reviews. And there are over 17,000 reviews for Hormone Harmony.
For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code MurderDiaries at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code MurderDiaries for 15% off today. Thank you, Happy Mammoth, for sponsoring this episode.
Soon, Hall County investigators were working side by side with not one, but 10 GBI agents and 4 GBI analysts. They had been flooded with various tips and information and eventually narrowed down their focus to just 4 people of interest. There was also a suspicious vehicle that the sheriff's office and the GBI were interested in learning more about. A silver-colored 1990s to early 2000s 4-door car, possibly a Dodge or a Chevy, and it was seen in the area of Hannah's apartment complex during the evening hours of August 23rd. According to some slightly conflicting eyewitness information, Hannah had been seen either standing near the car or exiting it. As 2012 turned to 2013, the case slowed down significantly. And for the first time since her daughter's murder, Mona spoke publicly to the press. She said, Hannah's family and friends have been living a nightmare since Hannah was reported missing and found murdered. Our entire family has suffered and continues to suffer every minute of that fateful evening. Mona went on to say, please help my family by coming forward with your information, even if that information is about your son or daughter. I feel sure you know that they can't come to grips with Hannah's death until they are truthful about what happened to her. On February 20th, 2013, investigators announced a $1,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of the person or persons responsible for Hannah's death. They were still looking for the silver car and focused on a few persons of interest, people who hadn't cooperated with the investigation thus far. Then in August of that same year, on the first anniversary of Hannah's murder, the Hall County Sheriff's Department and the GBI released a statement stating that they were renewing a request for public assistance. The silver car was still a very important lead, but one that continued to elude them. It's one of those loose ends out there that we'd like to tie up, they said, adding that the vehicle may have been repaired since it was seen the evening of Hannah's murder.
By this time, the case was at a standstill. The well of tips and leads and clues had all but dried up for the investigators. Mona Harris and Jeff Truelove tried to stay in touch with the Hall County Sheriff's Department, but their involvement was no longer necessary now that the flow of information on the case had ceased.
Time passed, months turned into years, and by 2015, the brutal murder of Hannah Truelove was officially a cold case. The summer of that year, Dan Franklin held a press conference delivering more bad news. Several persons of interest had been looked at, given polygraph tests, and cleared. And that silver vehicle that they'd been searching for was all but a ghost now. But in 2016, recent innovations in forensic technology revived Hannah's case ever so slightly. Keeping his cards as close to his vest as possible, Dan Franklin told WSB-TV, "We've had several persons of interest that we've talked to that remain persons of interest. What we're looking for is somebody on the fringe, somebody that has knowledge, that has a piece of information that'll open the door to these people that we've already looked at that we're not ready to discount yet. A couple years later in 2018, Dan Franklin made lieutenant. That kind of promotion typically means the end of investigating cases. But it was important to now Lieutenant Franklin that he be involved in trying to solve Hannah's murder. So he was given permission to remain the lead investigator. Lieutenant Dan Franklin believes that Hannah knew her killer. He said, "I think there were too many people out that evening. If she was taken against her will, they would have heard something or heard a struggle. I feel she came to this location with somebody voluntarily, somebody she knew." Franklin believes that more than one person may have been at the scene when Hannah was stabbed. Who we try to reach aren't necessarily the people that had the knife in their hand, but anybody that was present, less culpable and didn't have as much responsibility, but was just there, Franklin said. Maybe in a situation they didn't want to be in. In the 10 plus years since her murder, things have been rough for Jeff Truelove. He has battled colon cancer, endured countless chemotherapy treatments, and at his lowest, his health issues caused him to slip into a coma. Today, Hannah's father lives each day waiting for justice. Hope is what keeps him moving forward. Hope that the person who snuffed out his daughter's young life will finally be arrested. In August of 2022, he said it's been 10 years this month and still nobody's been charged. It's kind of like Frozen waiting on somebody to make a move. In the years after Hannah's disappearance, Hannah's mom, Mona, stayed in touch with Dan Franklin, hoping for a break in the case. Her heartbreak was palpable anytime she spoke of her daughter's murder. "I'm haunted by Hannah's death as any mother can understand," she once said. "We can't go back and save Hannah, but we can honor her memory and bring closure to her tragic death." But closure never came for Mona Harris. She died at 56 years of age on August 9th, 2022, just a few weeks before the 10th anniversary of her daughter's murder. That same summer, Dan Franklin spoke to the Gainesville Times, saying that he is 100% certain that he knows who killed Hannah Truelove. But the evidence isn't quite strong enough for a conviction. "We've had a suspect since the beginning," he said. "Our issue is that we have a lack of evidence to tie that person to the crime. It's not to say that we have zero evidence, but we just don't have enough." The suspect in question is a male whom Hannah was acquainted with before she was killed. As of 2022, he has been interviewed twice by law enforcement and maintained his innocence each time. Franklin understands the frustration that people feel when a viable suspect hasn't been arrested and charged. "Our burden to bear for an arrest is probable cause," he said. Do we have that? Probably. But our ultimate burden is proof beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. I would hate to make an arrest just purely on probable cause and then lose it at the trial phase, because we'll never get another shot at it.
Franklin believes the DNA might one day be the thing that finally helps them solve the case. Hannah was submerged in water after her murder, so the majority of trace and biological evidence was washed away in the crucial hours after her death. But if anything can catch a murderer, it's the continued advancements in molecular technology. Only time can tell, but it's all anyone can do to hope that the person who murdered Hannah Truelove can hear the clock ticking.
A decade has come and gone since this tragedy happened in the quiet community of Gainesville, Georgia. This year, Hannah Truelove would be looking forward to her 28th birthday. Would she be a successful veterinarian by now, going to work each day to care for the animals she loved so much? Would she have pursued her interest in modeling or even singing? Would she have gotten married or have had kids of her own by now? Who's to say what would have become of Hannah? That future was never allowed to happen for her. Jeff Truelove hopes Hannah's killer and anyone else involved or with knowledge of what happened will do the right thing and come forward, if only to relieve their guilt. Saying, I know it's got to weigh heavy on them, on whoever knows what's going on. Dan Franklin remains dogged in his search for Hannah's killer, both as a lead investigator and lieutenant. He said, I'm never going to let this go as long as I can. As long as I'm able, I'm going to keep trying to figure out how to get justice for her. He added, I have a daughter who's 17, and so I feel for her parents. I feel for her friends. And I didn't get into this business to let people that do this to children get away with it. He actually keeps Hannah's Nintendo DS near him to this day. If you're asking why, well, maybe having it around is a constant reminder of her case. That Hannah Truelove deserves justice and that there is still so much work to be done to make that happen. Or maybe it's a way to remind him of the unfairness and brutality that permeates the world in which we live. That if one 16-year-old's life can be discarded so thoughtlessly, then it could happen to the life of anyone's child. Or perhaps, and most importantly, it's his way to remember a young girl who once had so much promise, so much potential, so very much to look forward to. A future brimming with possibility and an entire world just waiting on her, out beyond the gates of an apartment building where she lived. If you have information about Hannah Truelove's murder or the silver vehicle that was seen at her apartment complex the day she was killed, we encourage you, we plead with you, please contact the Hall County Sheriff's Department tip line at 770-503-3232. You can also call the Georgia Bureau of Investigation tip line at 800-597-8477.
Don't forget to follow us on all of our socials at The Murder Diaries Pod. And until next time,
Stay safe.
bye.
Seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring '20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device or play on PC through Facebook Games.